The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello there and welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr, where each week I speak to an Olympic champion, a world record holder or a world number one to find out what they do differently from the rest of us to become the very best in their sport. This week I had the pleasure of talking to the reigning Olympic shot put champion from the Rio Olympics, Michelle Carter. We discuss a whole range of topics with the American. We talk about her sibling rivalry with her sister. We talk about her dad being her coach. Of course, he was an Olympic silver medalist in shot put at the 1984 Games. He also won the Super Bowl 3 times. So we talk about her family and her relationship with her dad. She also mentions her mum as well in the programme. All very interesting. We talk a lot about confidence. I think if there was a theme to this week's podcast, it would be about confidence. And I think we learned a lot from Michelle on that. We also talk about the moment when she became the Olympic champion last summer, defeating Valerie Adams, the reigning champion at the time, with her very last throw. We talk about that. We also talk about how she was successful at the World Indoor Championships. And I also ask her, is there any added pressure on her this year when she competes at the World Athletics Championships in London, because she is the reigning Olympic champion. That interview is just about to come on The Best in the World with Richard Parr, but I just want to tell you that you may have noticed this program is now going out on a Thursday. Yes, we're shifting the program by one day. It's going to come out every Thursday, The Best in the World with Richard Parr. And that's because, as you may well know, we're now part of the Sportacino network. And as part of the Sportacino network, we want to give you different, new, innovative content on different days of the week. And so from now on, our wrestling show, which has a working title of WrestleCino, if you've got a better idea for that, then get in touch. But our show all about professional wrestling is going to be regularly on a Wednesday. It's going to be a video cast. That means you can watch it at sportacino.com, Facebook and on YouTube from 3 p.m. British Standard Time. Sometimes they will be live, sometimes they will be pre-recorded. It depends on the guest, and we've got some really good guests lined up, and we've had some good guests already, such as the former WWE star Al Snow, and we have also had from Impact Wrestling Rockstar Spud. But lots of great guests coming up on our wrestling show, which is on a Wednesday. That means on a Thursday, it will be all about The Best in the World with Richard Parr, which for now is staying as a podcast, and we'll continue to speak to Olympic champions, world number ones, and world record holders that we can learn from. So let's get to our episode this week. I'm delighted to say that I was able to speak to the Olympic shot put champion, Michelle Carter.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Michelle Carter, Olympic shot put champion. Welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr. It's so great to have you on the program. Of course, that happened last summer. Just how has your life been ever since that moment?
Well, thank you for having me on the show. And man, my life has definitely been very busy lately, but it's been great.
Has there been any particular highlights since winning gold?
Oh, man. Well, I guess I've been able to just going out there actually and talking to the kids has definitely been awesome. Just then seeing their faces when they see the medal, they think it's so cool. So having something shiny always makes you popular with them.
Do you take it everywhere you go? Are you able to kind of share it with everyone to help inspire them?
I do bring it to a lot of places because I do realize it's something that some people never get to see. And so I try to take it with me to as many places as possible, but it's always a hard thing going through the airport with it. So sometimes it's just easier to leave it at home.
Yeah, most people, I have to take a belt off or some keys and stuff. It must still be slightly cool when you're like, oh, I've just got to take my Olympic gold medal out. That must be pretty fun.
It's funny because people look at it like, oh, so is this yours? I'm like, Yes, I don't think I'll be carrying somebody else's medal.
And you mentioned inspiring the kids and the kids really enjoying seeing the medal. Of course, you've got your own confidence camp, the You Throw Girl Sports Confidence Camp. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Michelle?
Yes, so You Throw Girl is like my play on words to You Go Girl. So the camp is like a two-part camp for now. It is like I have a general session where we just go over confidence and just things that as a female athlete you need to know. We definitely want to help build their confidence and help them just be the best that they can be in every area in life and not just in sports, but how what you learn in sports can translate into life. And then also I have the second session, which is for my throwers only, where I do have a couple of my friends, Gia Lewis Smallwood, Tia Brooks, and Shelby Bond, and my sister, Deandra Carter. We'll be coaching the girls during these sessions, just giving them some pointers on how to throw the shot and disc, and just kind of just help build them up and be there for them in any way.
Oh, fantastic. So I don't want you to give away your whole syllabus here, but what is the one thing which you try and instill in these girls to improve their confidence?
One thing I try to instill in them is to never give up on themselves. I think sometimes that when things get too hard, we assume that it's not for us, or if it's not going as smooth as we like it to, or we're not making that improvement as fast as we would like, that we give up. And I just want to encourage them, let them know, like, hey, you have to keep working hard through those tough times, because during those tough times is when you learn your biggest lessons, and then you end up having your biggest or your most success on the other side. And so, like I told, this is my third Olympics. If I would have given up after my first one, I never would have known if I could ever be a gold medalist. But I believed in myself, and I kept pushing, I kept working, and then it ended up happening. So I definitely want to encourage them, like, hey, you have to work hard. It doesn't happen overnight, and you keep pushing until you can't push anymore.
Is there one moment in your career and your life which was a really, really difficult moment? Maybe it was an injury, maybe it was a heavy defeat, and you kind of questioned, all right, why am I doing this? But then you broke through that, you went on, and obviously you went on to become an Olympic gold medalist. Was there ever like that moment you had?
Yes. Actually, one of the biggest turning points for me was in like 2012 and 2013 when my health kind of took a decline due to my hypothyroidism. And I was just constantly gaining weight. I wasn't getting stronger. I was tired all the time, and I just kept getting sick. And I really didn't know why. And I was just like, well, you know what? Maybe this is it for me. Maybe I won't get any better. And maybe I should start looking to see what else I need to transition into life. But it was like something on deep inside was telling me, like, don't give up just yet. Like, just keep pushing through. But then after I decided to keep going, it was like year after year, I kept having an injury. So 2013, I was sick. 2014, I tore my labrum in my hip. 2015, I had a dislocated shoulder. 2016, I had a herniated disc in my back prior to the Olympic Games. So each year it was always something, but I just felt like, okay, I can't be going through all these things for nothing. Like, there has to be something on the other side of this. And that's kind of what kept me going. Like, I just had to see if it's going to get better, because right now it's looking pretty bad. And each year that I feel like the injury gets worse. But at the same time, I feel like things happen to you for a reason. Sometimes things happen to kind of hold you back to get you ready for your time, or to teach you a lesson that you're going to need after something great happens to you. And so looking back, yeah, I'm grateful for the lessons I learned along the way, going through the sickness, going through the injuries, pushing through when times when things just wasn't lining up for me, because it's definitely built my character to where I am today. So when I was able to step into that ring at the Olympic Games, I had confidence in myself that I didn't even know I had, because I had pushed through a lot of different odds that was stacked up against me, and I was able to come out on the other side.
That's amazing. Let's talk more about confidence, because I think it's a really interesting topic. And when you're in an Olympic stadium and you've got tens of thousands of people, 60, 70,000 people, all eyes looking on you, is it hard to stay confident? Is it hard to just believe in what you're doing? Or is it so ingrained in your mind that you just kind of try to forget that?
It's definitely taken time for me to get to a place to where I don't have to think about it when I step into the ring. And confidence definitely begins at practice. I go through the same motion every day in, day out, working on my technique, working on what I'm doing. And I'm a big believer in the more you practice, the more confident you become. So I can throw with my eyes closed. You know, I can do this in my sleep because I practiced for so many years. And I take my practice seriously because I know that's what prepares me for the meets. And I think sometimes people just they just try to have confidence just by believing that you can, but confidence also comes from knowing that you're prepared for that moment. And there's been times when I stepped into the ring at a major championship and didn't feel prepared for that moment, because I know there was times when I may have missed out on my workout, or there's things I know I should have done, but I didn't. But the moment I chose to do everything that I could, make sure I crossed all my T's and dot all my I's, that definitely gave me that confidence. Like, okay, I'm prepared for this moment because I put that time, I put that work in. So that helped build my confidence that way. But then also, I just learned how to accept me for who I am and what I look like today. Definitely during my sickness, I've gained over 90 pounds. Really, overall, I gained over 100 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And that hurts your confidence, especially in a society where we live, where the way you look matters. Like, the fitter you look matters, especially being an athlete. That there's really no such thing to the public of a plus size athlete. But that's what I am. That's what I've always been. I've always been a larger girl. But then to gain 90, 100 pounds on top of that, that really hurt my confidence, because I was holding on to what I used to look like and what I was before. But I had to accept that my body's different now. And I have to love me where I'm at today regardless. And my body's going to change again. You know, I can get bigger, or I can lose the weight and feel better about myself. And then I still have to adjust about that. You know, I still have to make an adjustment to wherever my body's at. But I've learned to appreciate my body for what it is today, because who knows, if my body was different, could I have still accomplished what I accomplished? I don't know. But I'm glad that my body is where it's at today, because it did take me to the top of the podium.
Yeah, it sounds like it's that parallel of being mentally and physically prepared for whatever you need to achieve. And thankfully, you've been able to win an Olympic gold medal. And you were talking about practice there. Why don't you give us an insight of what is a typical training day for you like, Michelle? What time are you getting up? What are you eating? How long are your training sessions? Just give us an idea of roughly how your day would go, please.
Okay, so I wake up around 7 o'clock in the morning. I go to practice anywhere between 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning. And then I'm out there. I'm probably throwing the shot put for about 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
And then I'll probably take an hour to go eat and regroup. And then I'll go do some sprints, do some running, and then I'll head to the weight room. So I'm in the weight room for sure for a couple of hours, and then I'll probably do cardio and abs there. And then some days I'll mix in some plyometrics. And I know at least every day I'm spending at least 6 to 7, maybe even 8 hours training.
Crikey. And how much of that is with a coach or with other trainers, and how much of that is self-motivated?
For a while, I did a lot of it on my own. Well, my dad is my throws coach, so he's there every day when I go throw. And then I do have someone that I work in the weight room most of the time. But then some days, there are days where I am there by myself, where I have to make sure I get my work done or get everything I need to get in. So, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's all self-motivated, because even if you didn't have your coach there, you still have to put the work in and give it 100% while you're there. Because even if you had a coach and you're only giving 30%, you're not going to get that much in return. But regardless who's there or not, I try to give 100% every single time.
And you mentioned your dad there. Of course, he's a silver medalist in shot put himself. Of course, multi-time winner of the Super Bowl as well. When you said he's your coach, I'd love to know a bit more about your relationship, and how did that come about, of him kind of officially being your coach? Was it just naturally developed that way? He gave you pointers and then all of a sudden he's training you regularly? Or was there a moment when you said, Dad, officially I'd like you to become my coach? Like, how does that work?
Well, actually, since the day I told him I wanted to try out for the track team, he told me, like, well, if this is what you want to do, we can do it. He was like, but I'm going to teach you how to do it. Because growing up, I didn't know my dad accomplished what he accomplished in track and field. I grew up with him playing football, so that's all I knew. So when I got into track and field, it wasn't until I was like maybe in high school when I really understood what all he accomplished. So my dad kind of just told me from the jump, like, hey, I'm going to coach you, and I'm going to make sure you do this right. You know, don't worry about it. And I was like, okay, like, cool. Like, that was my coach since day one, so I never had to think about it. But of course, over the years, we definitely got into it quite a bit. But at the end of the day, I know that he only wants what's best for me, and he helps to try to push me to be all that I can be. And so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, is there the Carter family? Is it shot put when it's out on the track and not when it's in the home, or are you all living, breathing shot put all the time?
Oh, no, we definitely have the moments where we're just, it's just the Carter family. Because track and field is such a big part of our life and has been for over 20 years, we have to have those moments where, okay, track is over, we don't talk about it when we get home. And so he's always like, okay, at practice, I'm Coach Carter, but when I get home, I'm Daddy. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to call you Coach Carter. So I always joke and I call him Coach Daddy because he was my dad first, and then he became my coach. So for me, that makes sense. So when we get home, he's just my dad, and then we can still live life regularly.
Oh, that's lovely. And you mentioned your sister is also competing in shot put and as part of your confidence camp as well. Excuse me, because I don't know, Michelle. What's the age gap between you and your sister?
18 months, so almost 2 years.
So pretty close. Similar to me and my brother, who were always completely over the top competitive with each other. Was there any kind of competitive shot put sibling rivalry? And in some ways, do you think it has helped elevate how good you became?
Oh yeah, I think it was more of a rivalry for her than for me. Because I'm a big sister. I have to do good so I can show you how to do good. But at the same time, I can't let you beat me because I'm the big sister. You can only win when I'm not there. So her goal was to always try to beat me. But my goal was like, okay, if I do good, that means she's going to do good. And that's kind of how I took that. So it was never really a big competition. But even though we both were competitive, we both respected each other as athletes and did the best that we could do.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
We'll be back with more from Michelle Carter in just a moment, but I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Audible. Audible is one of the leading suppliers of audiobooks in the world. They've got over 180,000 titles for you to choose from. Currently, I'm listening to Mastery by Robert Greene. Really enjoying it. I actually listened to it at 1.5 times the speed. And maybe that's what you want to do on this podcast as well, because I find when people are reading, they're a little bit slower, and actually you can hear and comprehend things a little bit better if you do it at 1.5 times the speed. Give that a go. Let me know what you think. If you haven't got Audible, you can try it out for free. All you've got to do is go to audibletrial.com/best, and you can try out their service for free for 30 days, and included in that is one free download. So you can download any audiobook for free to test out their service by going to audibletrial.com/best. Maybe you want to try Mastery. Go on, give it a go. Let me know what you think. Let me know at Richard_Parr on Twitter. If you'd like to be a sponsor of the Best in the World with Richard Parr, if you would like to have your brand, your company associated with the very best sports people in the world, if you'd like to have your company and your brand associated with people who are world champions, Olympic champions, and not only that, these are people who are sharing their knowledge. If you think your brand aligns with being the very best, get in touch with us. Send us an email, sportsdesk@sportacino.com. We'd love to hear from you. All right, let's return to the conversation with the Olympic shot put gold medalist. It's Michelle Carter.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Let's talk about 2016, because it was an amazing year for you, and you'd put a lot of those injuries behind you, and you went on to win the indoor world championships first, then of course the Olympics. Was there anything other than not having injuries that you think you may have done last year that you weren't doing before?
I think the thing was I just had this focus. Because of the injuries and then the schedule that I had to keep after the fact made a difference, because now it was right after World Championships, indoor World Championships. 2 weeks after that, I got hurt. That's when I found out about my back. And knowing that puts me in a time crunch, that I didn't have time to play, I didn't have time to second guess. All I had to do was just figure it out and go to work. And so having that focus, knowing that when I wake up I have to do X, Y, and Z, to where I was waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning and gone out the door by 8 and wasn't coming home till like 9 o'clock at night. Like, you had to have some kind of focus to get that done day in and day out. And I think that definitely showed me a different kind of focus that I probably didn't have before, when I'll probably give myself more flexibility in what I was doing and how I was training. But then in that moment, I didn't have a choice. So mentally, I had to switch my thinking and my actions to really match what I wanted to do at the end.
And that comes down to one thing which we talk quite a bit on this podcast about, goal setting. And by the sounds of it, that's almost like daily goal setting for you. Now, when you were looking at that following day, is that something you'd write down the night before? Is it something you'd have planned ahead of time, or you just kind of knew what you needed to do?
I kind of knew what I needed to do, but I also write it down. So I knew on what days I have Pilates, I know which days I go to rehab, I know which days I go get a massage, or I have everything planned. I know which days I sprint, I know which days I don't, I know which days I'm going to lift weights. So I do keep a schedule of what I'm going to do that week. And sometimes we may switch things around depending on what's going on, but I definitely have an idea of what I'm doing every day prior, at least about 2 weeks in advance.
And in that year, you had, I believe on at least 3 occasions, you won competitions. From what I can remember, I think Olympic trials and the Olympic Games themselves, you won these competitions with your last throw. Is that deliberate? Did you do anything in your training, be it physically or mentally, to say, all right, this last throw is going to be the absolute jackpot? Or were you always doing that?
Actually, no. It's just something that my dad kind of instilled in me. young is that you don't end practice on a bad note. So I always try to make sure, like my last few throws, knowing that, okay, if I have X amount of throws left, I might be tired, I might be ready to go, but my last 3 throws need to be just as good as my first 3 throws. And that's something that we've worked on for years. It's just happened that this year, the ending of the track meets have been so dramatic. But it kind of comes to, at the end of practice, I just know that if I practice that, so when I know I go to a meet, I can't die at the last 3 throws. Like, I have to bring it on the last 3 throws just as much as I did on the first 3 throws. And that's kind of my mindset.
Before a competition, do you have any kind of pre-competition rituals? Like when you're in the stadium, is there anything you do? Do you like put on certain socks in an order, or do you have anything, superstitions, anything like that?
There's a couple of things that I do that I always have. Like, I always have to have on earrings. Like, that's my thing. I have to have some kind of earrings on. And that comes from my mom. When I was little, she always joked and say, "Michelle, your head's too big to not wear earrings." So, so I always make sure I have on earrings. And then also, for me, having my eyelashes are definitely something that I have to have. Like, that's become part of my routine, is to kind of put on a little bit of makeup and get dressed like I'm getting dressed for work, because I'm going to work. And so I kind of prepare that way to make sure that, my hair is done nice, that my nails are painted, and that I have on some kind of lipstick, eyelashes, and my earrings. And I'm good to go.
Because, of course, you're a professional makeup artist as well. Is that something you've always been interested in, Michelle? And in some ways, does it help with being a shot putter, because it helps bring that confidence for you when you're competing?
I think so, because especially in my events, it's not look something feminine or something that's really girly, or even something that girls can do. And I remember growing up, I did struggle or trying to be like hard and tough and want people to take me serious, but then I want to be cute at the same time. And so I couldn't separate those two for me, because that is me. Like, I will put on a dress when I was young, but I'll be out there wrestling with all the boys in my dress. And so now it just turned into, here I throw this big heavy ball in some dirt, but I do it in lipstick and lashes, and I love it because it's kind of part of who I am. I've always been interested in it, and I couldn't separate the two. And I feel like sometimes people try to separate parts of themselves when you don't have to. So I just learned how to bring that part of me into sports, but in a way where it's not taking away from what I do, where I'm only focused on the makeup part. But at the same day, I want to look good when I'm on camera and when I take pictures. So I kind of keep all that in mind, because it does make me feel good about myself.
And of course, the most cameras were on you when you became the Olympic champion. Just tell us how that felt when you did that final throw and became the Olympic champion.
Well, yeah, when I took that last throw, I knew that throw was better than all my other throws. And so I didn't know how far it was going to be until they measured it. But when they measured it and they showed where it was and how far it was, and I moved up to first place, I was happy. And I was so excited, but I couldn't get too excited because I knew Valerie had one more throw. And I always believe that the competition isn't over until it's over. So I didn't want to celebrate too early, and I didn't win, because she still could come back and beat me. But when the competition was finally over and I see that she didn't have a better mark, it was just like this relief. Something that I've been working towards for so long finally happened. And you have these dreams and these goals, and sometimes we never know if they're really going to happen, or if they happen, like, how are they going to happen? And how my journey to gold happened, I would never pictured it that way. I would imagine that once I opened up an indoor, that it would have been great, and that I would have no issues. I would have the perfect season and then the Olympic Games. But it wasn't like that. But it just made me grateful for all those moments where I didn't give up on myself and where I kept believing in myself. And it like all of a sudden, I'm not crazy for thinking that I could be Olympic champion because it happened. And so in the moment, I was just relieved, and I just really couldn't believe that it happened the way that it did, because I'm like, really? Like, I won. Like, for real. Like, this is not a joke. I really won.
That's incredible. And, of course, this year, 2017, it's the World Athletics Championships taking place in London. You've already started the season pretty well. I know you did well at the Doha Diamond League recently.
Yeah.
Do you feel any pressure going into the World Championships as the Olympic champion?
No, I don't. I believe I take each track season for itself. I don't try to say, well, I won last year, I should win this year. In track and field, anything can happen. So I just, I'm happy what I did last year, but this year I start with a clean slate and I look at the things that I need to improve on, and I just kind of rebuild from there. Because I feel like the doors are always open for a new champion. And at the end of the day, is who worked the hardest and who wanted it the most when it counts.
Mm. What do you think you need to improve on the most, Michelle?
I definitely still need to iron out my technique. There's just some things that if I just get better in my technique, make it smoother, will definitely make a big impact on my throw. So that's like the main thing I'm really working on right now.
Well, we can't wait to see you at the World Athletics Championships. It's been so good to talk to you today, Michelle. Just before you go, why don't you tell us where we can find out more about you online and how we can continue to follow your journey on social media, Twitter, etc., please?
Yes, so on Twitter and Instagram, my handle is ShotDiva, ShotDiva. And you can also follow me on, and you can also look up the information on my website at shotdiva.com, and you can find all the information there.
Perfect. Love the handle. Been really good to talk to you, Michelle. Thank you so much for being on the program, and thank you for being the best in the world.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Wonderful to talk to Michelle Carter on this week's Best in the World with Richard Parr. If you're interested in field athletics and Olympic champions, maybe you want to go back and listen to my conversation with the long jump Olympic champion Jeff Henderson, who won in Rio. Maybe go and listen to that. We've also had lots of other champions from the 2016 Games. Recently, we spoke to Callum Skinner, who's a track cycling Olympic gold medalist. We also spoke to Connor Fields, who won in BMX racing. Go and listen back to them. They're all on Acast. That's acast.com/best. And they're also all at sportacino.com. Sportacino.com has all of the episodes of The Best in the World with Richard Parr. And if you listen to it on iTunes, please press the subscribe button and give us a rating and review. I'd really like you to do that. Alright, I hope you've had a wonderful time listening to my conversation with Michelle Carter. I think we can all agree we've learned a lot from her. We'll be speaking to another amazing athlete next week on The Best in the World with Richard Parr. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful week. See you next Thursday. Goodbye.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.